Chase Briscoe's victory at Darlington propelled the soon-to-be-defunct team into the playoffs and put everyone else on notice, stating that Stewart-Hass Racing isn't quite done yet, but it also resulted in backlash from multiple NASCAR drivers who are not so happy to see Briscoe win here. Stewart-Hass Racing's 15-year NASCAR history will come to an end in only 10 weeks, but because to a magical moment at Darlington, the team's 323 employees have something to strive for until that day arrives: the Cup Series title. Those employees were on Chase Briscoe's mind as he stood on the front stretch, celebrating his incredible victory in the Southern 500. To get this 14 car back in victory lane, and for all 320-something employees to be able to race for a championship in their final year, it's unbelievable, he said. The day that we found out that the team wasn't going to exist anymore, we went over to the shop floor and we all looked at each other and said, "We're in this until the end. We're not going to give up." We kept saying all week that we had one bullet left in the chamber, and that bullet hit. Briscoe's crew chief, Richard Boswell, shared his thoughts on the challenges of competing at the top level of the sport while out of work. "For those of us that have been there for quite some time, it's sad, right? It sucks. This is family. Every employee there I would have at Christmas dinner," he said. "I think the struggle and the difficulty that's come with it has been, we have a job to do and that hasn't changed. I can't tell you how many guys I have in my office every week wondering, where should I go? I'm worried about my future." You have to have those conversations, just from an empathy standpoint. You have to take those guys in and let them know that you care. That's just added more work and more hours. I would say that's been the biggest difference. Just trying to be mindful of what everybody is going through, but also know we have a job to do, and to try to do our best to bring the best cars we can every week. Briscoe's 7-year stint with Stewart-Hass ended on a high note, and he's one of the few whose future is assured, having signed with Joe Gibbs Racing to drive the number 19 Toyota Camry next season. However, many SHR employees' futures are far from guaranteed. Gene Haas and Tony Stewart co-own Stewart-Hass Racing, which has won 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships. The first was in 2011, with Stewart driving, and the second in 2014, with Kevin Harvick. Until Briscoe's strong Darlington finish propelled him into the playoffs, SHR had no playoff drivers and 0 victories in the previous 2 seasons, despite fielding a massive 4-car squad. When Briscoe reached the finish line, he not only broke the drought, but also brought the squad full circle. Not only was it the team's 70th Cup Series victory, but it occurred in the number 14 car, driven by Stewart, who had previously won the organization's debut race in 2009. And Briscoe is a self-proclaimed diehard fan of his longtime employer. "That's the car I cheered for growing up," said Briscoe after the race. "I've seen that car win time and time again, and win a championship. It's been 90-something races since that car has been in victory lane. At least now we have a chance to go win a championship. We don't have any playoff points or anything like that. I kind of love the back up against the wall thing. That's certainly what we're going to have now." Briscoe received a call from Smoke himself following the race, congratulating him on his Southern 500 victory. "Tony called," said Briscoe, "just to hear how excited he is. From a morale standpoint, it's huge at our building. It's been tough. It's definitely just a weird time right now. For me to be there for 7 years and be like family with a lot of those guys, it means a lot." Chase Briscoe's surprise victory also meant others are missing out, and well, it's safe to say they aren't as happy as Briscoe is. For example, Chris Buescher, who began the regular season finale with a 21-point lead over Bubba Wallace, holding the 16th and last position in the playoffs. However, the pressure increased as laps ticked away. Wallace got 11 stage points to Buescher's 1, cutting the difference in half. Todd Gilliland of Front Row Motorsports collided with Buescher on the outside wall with 46 laps remaining, spinning the fellow Ford driver out as his playoff chances faded. However, caution allowed him to pit for 4 fresh tires, something Wallace did not do. The momentum shifted back in Buescher's favor as he moved ahead of Wallace in points. A multi-car pileup then took the number 23 Toyota of Wallace out of contention, but it was not a moment of relief for Buescher. Chase Briscoe, who dominated the race and eventually won his way into the playoffs, eliminated Buescher despite finishing 6th. It was all for nothing. He was eliminated by just 6 points. "It's frustration and disbelief altogether," said Buescher after the race. The RFK Racing driver has been dangerously close to victory this year, losing the Kansas race to Kyle Larson in the tightest photo finish in NASCAR Cup history, 0.001 seconds. He cut a tire at this circuit earlier this year after colliding with Tyler Reddick while leading late in the race. However, with surprise victories like as Briscoe and Harrison Burton, he found himself as the first man out when the 16-driver playoff grid was created. We felt like we did for the most part what we needed to do today, according to him. We got back in contention there at the end and got a decent finish out of it. We just didn't quite get it done again and we're on the outside looking in. It's just the system we're all playing in. We had such a great year. Everyone at RFK has worked so hard. We've been so fast. We've outrun so many of these cars that are going to get to run for a championship, but that's the system and we didn't work it right. This year, 5 drivers behind Busch in the standings went ahead of him with race wins, demonstrating the importance of the win and you're in system that has characterized modern NASCAR. I'm definitely going to think back on different times throughout the year and we'll figure out how to do better next time, Busch said. But Busch wasn't the only that fell victim of the win and you're in system, as Kyle Busch lost out twice in the last 2 races, finishing both in second with less than a second between him and the playoffs. Busch even restarted 9th with only 17 laps to go at Darlington and swiftly soared through the field on somewhat fresher tires. It was a courageous performance by the 2-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, who is facing his first winless season since entering the Cup season full-time in 2005. It only took him 2 laps to get into second place, with another must-win driver slightly ahead of him, Chase Briscoe. They were all over the track as the tires wore down, and Busch was anxious for clear air. He closed in but was never able to catch up, finishing second to yet another surprise winner in consecutive weeks. His 2024 playoff run is ended before it even began, and Harrison Burton and Chase Briscoe are to blame for that. When I made it through a few of those guys right there on the start, I thought we had a start to get there, said Busch, believing he had enough life in the tires to overtake Briscoe. I think I just needed him to have maybe 3 or 4 more laps, older tires for me to be able to break through the wake. Once I got within his air, I really didn't have enough to power through that, to get closer. I was kind of sliding already. Hate it for our guys, everybody on our team, everybody at RCR. They turned it around these last 4 or 5 weeks and we've run a lot better. That's been much improved, beneficial to our team and the organization. Busch praised the crew for their progress throughout the race, stating that, "We really overachieved towards the end. It's something to build on after a disappointing season for the number 8 Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet. They appeared to turn things around in recent weeks, but it was just too little, too late." He was left to think about all the times the checkered flag slid through his fingers. Notably, in March, he was the middle car in a 3-wide picture in Atlanta, missing out on victory by only a few inches. A similar situation to what Busch had with Kyle Larson. "I wanted it last week, I wanted it this week, I wanted it in Atlanta, I wanted it in Vegas. There's been a lot of opportunities. Daytona 500 we were up front all day. I can count them at least on a hand. Maybe I need 2 hands to count opportunities that have slipped away." The veteran driver now has 10 weeks to extend his record string of 19 consecutive Cup wins. But even if he wins one of the upcoming races, he'll always think about what could have been this season. What are your thoughts on this year's playoff drivers? Happy to see some wildcard in there? Or are you expecting them to fall out of it pretty quickly? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.